It's so funny how the past, you think you're doing fine, but, because true love, God, Lily, what on earth is going on with your cans?
Hello. In my last video, I spoke about probably one of the most disregarded and controversial characters in the Dragon Quest franchise, Jasper. So I decided to flip to the other side of the coin and discuss someone who is not just one of the most beloved characters in Dragon Quest. She could be one of the most beloved video game characters of all time. Today's character quest is going to be none other than Jessica Albert from Dragon Quest VIII. Jessica Albert is a character I don't think I've ever seen a negative thing said about. She brings so much to the table in DQ8 and has traits that appeal to any and every player of the game, plus a character arc that's both interesting and satisfying, and an iconic look that's still adored and recognizable to this day. So I'm going to break down her character for you in this video. I'll explain her story if you're unfamiliar with her character, or if it's been a while since you played the game, considering it came out 20 years ago, so you can gain a full understanding of her intricacies and goal motivations. So sit back, relax, and let's get a mosey on. Let's start with Jessica's background. Jessica is the daughter of a wealthy family in the town of Alexandria. Her mother is Rosalind Albert, a prim and proper matriarch who has firm values on how a lady should behave, and is dead set with setting Jessica up with a suitor to maintain the family's reputation. Jessica has a very close relationship with her brother Alistair, who was unfortunately murdered by Dhoulmagus in the early stages of DQ8. Jessica, understandably, is completely distraught with Alistair's death and becomes fixated on the idea of leaving Alexandria to seek revenge. Jessica has quite a strained relationship with her mother. In contrast to Rosalind's idea of women being ladylike and reserved, Jessica is far more set on independence and empowerment, and Alistair's death was the breaking point for their relationship. When Jessica voices the intention of leaving Alexandria with the hero's party to go after Dhoulmagus, Rosalind is livid and an argument ensues, resulting in Rosalind disowning Jessica. Jessica is not too fazed by this and takes advantage of this newfound freedom to embark on her journey. I absolutely adore the character dynamic of Jessica and Rosalind. I mentioned in my Jasper video how much I love when Dragon Quest, despite being a fantasy world where just about anything is possible, still has these scenarios where characters feel trapped within the confines of simply being human. I mean, Jessica can literally throw fire at people, but she still feels this conflict of having to meet the expectations of her mother. Like, what's stopping Jess from frizzling her mother out of it anytime she has a snide remark to say about her outfit or her manners? It not only highlights that these authoritarian dynamics still exist within the world of Dragon Quest, but emphasizes the chokehold they can have on people so much more. Despite how powerful Jessica is, however, it does not stop the sheltered and privileged life she has lived from impacting her throughout the game. For example, when she goes to Port Prospect in hopes to take a ship to Peregrine Key, she is denied passage due to dangerous conditions in the water, and she throws an absolute wobbler over this.
Is there anyone around here with half a brain?
Jessica, throughout the story of DQ8, goes on a journey of understanding what true empowerment and independence really is. And a side effect of this is learning that no longer being attached to her family name means that she will not be getting the preferential treatment that she is used to. Back at home, she had maids and chefs to constantly cater to her every need. The staff in her family home even remark that Lady Jessica is quite an entitled person. Leaving home, as a result, becomes the culture shock that is very much needed in order for Jessica to become her true self and achieve her full potential in the story. With that being said, it's not to say that Jessica had no warmth in her whatsoever. Jessica had a very close bond and a lot of compassion for two children in the village of Alexandria, Bangers and Mash. I'm not even going to comment on that one. Whatever. Jessica has a particularly soft spot for these two young boys, and it is clear that leaving them was the hardest part of leaving Alexandria for her. While Jessica likely learned her sense of entitlement from her mother, it becomes more transparent that she learned her empathy and patience from her brother Alistair. Alistair was a very noble and well-loved figure in Alexandria, and his death clearly had an impact on Bangers and Mash too. Jessica choosing to leave the comfort of her wealthy life to seek justice for Alistair is another metaphor of Jessica choosing the path of humility and compassion for the betterment of her persona. not that one. When Jessica first meets the hero and his gang, they are clearly not the kind of people she would typically associate herself with. She is initially perplexed by Yangus's casual demeanor and King Trode's unsavory appearance. She even accuses the team of being her brother's killers, partially due to them being in the wrong place at the wrong time, but also could be because she assumes based on looks alone that they could be thugs. It is something Jessica possibly learned from her mother, who is very obsessed with appearances, and is something Jessica grows to unlearn as the story progresses. But when Jessica learns that the hero's crew are not her brother's killers, she is very quick to take responsibility for her ill judgment and apologize, which shows another gleam of her brother's humble influence. Jessica becomes very well integrated with the gang quite quickly. She is curious to learn their own respective backstories and takes a particular shine to the hero, whose moral compass and noble demeanour may remind her of Alistair quite a bit. Despite her sheltered upbringing, Jessica holds very little fear when faced with the danger and monsters in the world outside Alexandria. She quickly becomes one of the strongest members in the party, and her magic attack power being absolutely paramount to the gang's success in battles. When the gang arrive in Myella Abbey and Simpleton, they meet the womanizer Angelo for the first time. It is the first emphasis on Jessica's sex appeal in the game. Jessica is no stranger to this appeal. It's even a skill tree that can be leveled up within the game, and I'm going to give my own thoughts on that in just a moment. When Jessica is living with her mother, she is dressed in very formal attire that covers most of her body. When she decides to leave home, however, she changes into a far more stylized outfit that shows her figure and assets off much more. I find it worth noting that the clothing her mother has her wear is very bleak and bland in colour, and when she changes, she's in a far more vibrant and colourful outfit that feels far more representative of her character, and it's honestly such an iconic look. The flared red skirt, corset, and low-cut purple top, it's an absolutely phenomenal style that complements her and her personality. It feels fashionable and practical, for the most part, assuming the top and corset is incredibly supportive and breathable. But let's get back to my point about Jessica's charm and appeal. The addition of sex appeal as an actual skill set in Dragon Quest VIII is, in my opinion, so damn cool, and I love it so much. And I feel I have an interesting perspective to give on it from my own life experience. I often grew up feeling that I needed to suppress my own appearance in order to make myself feel safer in the world. Once I got around to the age 15, as sad as it sounds, I became more prone to unfortunate things like sexual harassment and catcalling. As a musician who began doing gigs in pubs at that age, I was sadly exposed to that sort of thing quite often. So I did things like cover up more, not wear as much makeup, keep my hair short. I also grew up in a small rural town in Ireland, which is very Catholic if you didn't know. So being a woman is seen as being weaker and needing to be ladylike, being quiet and modest. All of the ideals that Rosalind Albert would uphold. When I was 17 and I played Dragon Quest VIII for the first time, absolutely was floored by Jessica not shying away from her femininity, but utilizing it to become more powerful and to protect others and herself. Look, I'm here to analyze a collection of pixels in a video game. I'm well aware. It absolutely may not be that deep. And the addition of Jessica's sex appeal could be nothing more than fan service to gamers. That is a very likely possibility. It doesn't change the way I interpreted it as a young woman and carried it with me through adulthood to embrace my own feminine identity. When characters throughout the game try to objectify and reduce Jessica, she is absolutely not afraid to put them in their place while holding her head high. And using her appeal to beguile enemies and aid the gang in their quest is such a cool and fun bonus to that. This brings me to the topic of Jessica's relationships with other members of the hero's party, starting with Angelo. This is a very interesting dynamic that I want to take a minute to talk about, as it's curious. Angelo is basically smitten with Jessica from the moment he lays eyes on her, and Jessica's having none of it. She has the wits to see right through Angelo's facade, and they have a very peculiar bond throughout the game. Angelo is very often flirting with Jessica, all the while seeming very protective of her, but Jessica is very adamant that she needs no protection from anyone.
Consider me your personal bodyguard.
Sure, Romeo, in your dreams.
They, of course, along with the entire gang, develop an unbreakable bond from the trials and tribulations that they mutually experience together. And I think Angelo's pestering of Jessica becomes more of an inside joke than a proposition as time goes on. Although, In Dragon Quest Heroes 2, they definitely play into that dynamic a bit too hard, and Jessica seems genuinely uncomfortable around him, and it's awkward to watch that in the game. I'm not sure what the intention was there, but I wasn't really a fan because it makes the dynamic go from being a light-hearted flirty banter to a restraining order in the making. Jessica and Yangus's dynamic is far more humorous, as for most of the game the pair are bickering and roasting each other. It's a hilarious showcase of the completely different social classes that they come from, and how Yangus's plays an instrumental role in humbling Jessica throughout the game. Then we have Jessica and the hero. As I've said before, Jessica takes a particular liking to the hero from early on due to his similarities to her brother Alistair. For this reason, I'm not a huge fan of the idea of the hero and Jessica being paired off as a romantic couple. I'm aware they added the option in the 3DS port of the game, but there's many other reasons I think it's a bad fit, including simply the fact that the hero and Medea feel like the real star-crossed lovers of DQ8, and the fact that the hero acting as a brotherly figure in place of Alistair to be a guiding light for Jessica suits their dynamic so much more to me. I personally feel that Jessica's character arc lands best when she ends up as someone capable of standing on her own 2 feet, without the need to rely on Alistair anymore, or anyone for that matter. Her going from being someone living a sheltered and codependent life to someone incredibly powerful and capable of protecting the whole world alongside herself holds a much more impactful value, I think. It's only as I was writing the script, I found myself scratching my head trying to come up with something to say about Jessica's relationship to King Trode and Princess Medea, but I'm honestly so stuck here. For starters, Medea's a horse, so there's not much to say there. I am certain that Jessica and King Trode interact throughout the game, but any of my research and skimming through game footage came up with nothing of note. They're probably good pals, I guess? Maybe secret lovers? Anyway, overall, Jessica forms bonds with her teammates as they travel across the world in search of Dhoulmagus, and each respective connection that she forms contributes positively to the person she grows to be, in one way or another. And to side note, these bonds are pretty much the glue that holds Dragon Quest VIII together to make it such a memorable game. They're written to perfection and still hold up as superb character writing 20 years after the game's release. But now let's talk about one of the most important parts of Jessica's story, her revenge on Dhoulmagus. At the midway point of the game, the gang finally track down Dhoulmagus to fight him and make him face consequences for all of his crimes. After the gang beats both phases of his boss battle, Dhoulmagus perishes, leaving behind the magic staff he stole from Trodane Castle at the beginning of the game. It is a very celebratory moment in the game that was highly anticipated by both the characters and us, the player. However, the vibe is immediately put off when we see that Jessica is not celebrating like the others. She's standing still with a 1,000-mile stare. When Angelo asks her how she feels after taking down her brother's killer, all she has to say is this:
Defeating Dhoulmagus isn't going to bring Alistair back. It's hard to know what to feel.
It becomes clear that Jessica getting her revenge on Dhoulmagus would have never felt as amazing as she had hoped. She's now dealing with the aftermath, and the realization that killing Dhoulmagus did not bring back her brother, and nothing would really change about her circumstances. She would still have to grieve him, she would still be disowned by her mother, and she would still end up alone, without family. This reminded me a lot of The Last of Us Part 2. Huge spoiler warning for Last of Us Part 2, by the way. There is a lot to compare between Jessica and Ellie, and how their whole being becomes so consumed with grief and a lust for vengeance that they don't stop once to think that maybe achieving this would never be as satisfactory as they imagine it would be in their heads. Sure, they've become incredibly strong and tactful on their quest, but no amount of violence and vigilante justice would ever fill the hole their loved one left behind. Jessica is now locked in a perpetual state of now what? Her friends, unfortunately, are too caught up celebrating to pay attention to the inner conflict Jessica is facing right now. And as they leave, Jessica is left contemplating, holding the scepter that Dhoulmagus left behind. What the gang didn't know at this stage in their journey is that the scepter they retrieved from Dhoulmagus wasn't just powerful, it was essentially cursed. It had the power to manipulate anyone vulnerable enough to put their hands on it. Then it would possess them with the spirit of Rapthorn, a demon that ruled over the world of darkness. Rapthorn was sealed away by the 7 sages inside this Godbird scepter, and as long as there were living descendants of the 7 sages, Rapthorn would remain sealed inside the scepter. When Dhoulmagus touched the scepter, he became possessed by Rapthorn to go after the 7 sages' heirs and kill them one by one of the descendants being Jessica's brother, Alistair. Now with Dhoulmagus defeated and Jessica both unsatisfied and emotionally vulnerable, Rapthorn had the next perfect host for his scheme, and all she had to do was pick up the scepter. What happens next in Jessica's story is an interesting depiction of where grief and vulnerability can lead someone. If you frame it right, it is a Dragon Quest game after all. If I was to make a very, very broad comparison, I'd mention movies like Ari Aster's Hereditary or Midsommar. Actually, Hereditary is literally like you took the plot of Dragon Quest VIII and made it into a terrifying horror movie. Just interjecting here because what the hell am I talking about? I have no idea where I got this notion from. When I recorded this, I was just like 3 days out from having a surgery. I swear they gave me a lobotomy in the process. Ignore the statement. Carry on. Hyperbolic comparisons aside, what becomes of Jessica following her possession by Rapthorn subverts expectations slightly. Like, okay, they didn't make her possessed self kill anyone because in a game like Dragon Quest, that goes against the whole the good guys have to be 100% good trope. So they made the dog do it after she snaps out of it. Anyway, that doesn't matter, whatever. But it's the closest thing we get to a protagonist breaking bad. All of Jessica's suppressed vices come to the forefront. Her prejudices, her selfish nature and entitlement all become puppeteered by Rapthorn so she can raise hell on innocent civilians. There's also a comparison to be made to this and when Jade gets possessed in Dragon Quest XI. Not hugely relevant to any story element, but very similar nonetheless. But honestly, besides that, her possession is very brief before the hero and his team intervene. What is interesting, however, is what we see after she is freed from Rapthorn's grasp. Jessica is unconscious after Rapthorn leaves her body. In a dream state, she has visions reliving memories of her brother, Alistair. In this particular memory, Alistair is telling Jessica the story of their ancestor, Alexandra, who is of more direct descent of one of the great sages, Alexander, who helped seal away Rapthorn. Alexandra was both a great sword fighter and mage, and Alistair tells Jessica that he believes that she inherited Alexandra's magical powers, and these powers are yet to be awakened from within her. This memory being reawakened in Jessica is what drives her to no longer suppress her thoughts and feelings, and admit to her friends how she didn't really feel any better after defeating Dhoulmagus, or like Alistair's death had been avenged at all. This and a mage named Domenico helping unlock her untapped magic helps Jessica to become even more powerful on her quest and to become more in tune to her true self. And she carries that with her through the rest of the story. While writing this script, I had much more on-screen character time to work with than the Jasper video, and still a lot to say, mind you. I noticed that even in the scenes that expanded Jessica's character, there wasn't a whole lot of nuance that would be up for interpretation, or any major defining moments where Jessica has her true arc completed. And I'm not saying that as a critique, but the biggest question I set out for myself when crafting this video was this: what made Jessica so widely loved in the Dragon Quest community, or even just so loved by anyone that played Dragon Quest VIII? I've outlined her main story arc and why I personally love her character, and I'm not sure I've fully answered that question on the grander scheme yet. I could sit here and go on a further ramble about her overcoming grief for her own entitlement to stand along the hero and take down a greater evil, but even then, I don't think that's the only reason she's loved either. That's too reductive. And I don't think it is just her sex appeal either, even though that is a very big part of her character. I think if that was the case, we'd be hearing a lot more about characters like Maya and Mina being held in such high esteem. These characters are loved. Jessica is adored. The answer is so much more blatant than that. Jessica is loved for a culmination of the things I've mentioned, and the fact that she, along with all of her DQA co-stars, are just so well written. Dragon Quest VIII may have one of the best cast of characters in any RPG ever made, and that's a big statement, but I stand by it. Before I replayed it, I honestly couldn't even remember the story all that well. I had to remind myself on who Rapthorn even was. When I play this game, I play it to spend time with Jessica, Angelo, King Trode, and Yangus, the hero, to hear their witty banter, their bonding with one another, and their incredibly positive morale and auras. It's something I'd easily liken to what I enjoyed so much about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, you could even make a visual comparison between Angelo and Yangus to Legolas and Gimli. What makes Lord of the Rings so great isn't the fact that they do just such a damn good job protecting that ring. It's the bond and sense of camaraderie that you feel from the group of characters that makes you fall in love with all of them. I get the exact same feeling from Dragon Quest VIII. And with Jessica, she is the perfect bow that ties everyone together. She offers a level head in tense situations. She shows restraint but is incredibly powerful and capable of looking after herself and others. In combat, she is the perfect jack of all trades, able to land incredible attacks like Magic Burst, but also act as a support with moves like Hustle Dance. Throughout the story, she is the most in tune with the character's emotions and is almost clairvoyant to the world around her. She never strays far from her goal and never causes any unnecessary roadblocks to the story or senseless character drama or misguided decisions. Even when she falls victim to Rapthorn's possession, it's an essential plot point that teaches the team about his true intentions and where they need to go next. Jessica is a great character, but first and foremost, she is a good character. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I put across my points in a coherent way. I'm still not 100% after my operation, but I didn't want to leave such a big gap between videos this time. I'm looking forward to doing more deep dives like this. Let me know if you have any other characters or just topics in Dragon Quest that you'd like me to cover. If you like this video, please feel free to subscribe, comment, the works. You know how it goes. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next one, but until then, my name's Gronya, and I like Dragon Quest.